And right now, the tip of the spear fighting back against austerity here in the United States is the Occupy movement. So what will victory look like, and how will it finally be achieved? Chris Hedges joins me now. He's a journalist and contributor to Truthdig, the author of numerous books, including his latest, The World as It Is, Dispatches on the Myth of Human Progress. Chris was also featured in one of our installments of Conversations with Great Minds, which can be seen at the website conversationswithgreatminds.com. Chris, welcome.
Thank you.
From where you sit today, what's the end game in all this? Depression, revolution, a decade of recession?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge that absolutely nothing is being done to address the severe issue of climate change and the disruption to the ecosystem, which will have dramatic economic and political effects throughout the globe. One of the engines that has been pushing the protests throughout the Middle East is, of course, the rise in commodity prices. Wheat has increased in price by over 100% during the last year, but along with other staples as well. And when you're living on $2 a day and over half of that income goes to feed your family, that inevitably pushes you out into the streets. We're already seeing, with the bottom 47 million Americans who in this country live in poverty, they're spending now about 35% of their income on food. The speculators are back at work. The $2 billion loss at JP Morgan Chase, the implosion of Chesapeake Energy, these are warning signs that the system is once again teetering on the edge of collapse. You mentioned Greece withdrawing from the Eurozone. Don't forget that the international banking system will destroy the Greek currency in order to transfer out of the euro. I guess they would go back to the drachma. That would mean essentially they would have to freeze accounts. And during that period, you would watch the drachma itself sink to such a low level that at a minimum, people who had money in banks would lose 40 or 50% of their investment in terms of what it's worth against the euro. You're already seeing a flight of international capital out of Greece. This is just a harbinger of what's coming. We are not able to sustain the levels of consumption, not only within the United States, but globally. People are waking up to the fact that life for them is not only not going to be better, but it's not going to get better for their children. What causes revolutions, as Crane Brinton points out in his classic work, Anatomy of a Revolution, is not so much poverty, but that gap in expectations, what people expect from their lives and what finally is deliverable to their lives. We are watching, in essence, the collapse of globalization, and the consequences of that will be very far-reaching. It is very short-sighted to write off the Occupy movement. It may not constitute itself in the future as an Occupy movement around encampments. It will certainly mutate and change, as all movements do. But very clearly, the forces that drove people into the streets and into these encampments are busy at work, hollowing the country out from the inside and pushing us once more towards the precipice. And you can read the most respected economic writers in this country, from Gretchen Morgenson on down, who are now ringing the alarm bell over precisely that.
Why do you think we're seeing so much political turmoil and social unrest in those countries in Europe that are racked by austerity, but here in the United States, where Republicans are pushing similar and if not worse austerity, there's seemingly no political consequences, and recent polls even show Mitt Romney winning the presidential election?
Well, because it's not just the Republicans who are pushing austerity. The Democrats are as culpable in this as the Republican Party. And, I subscribe to Sheldon Wolin's argument that we have undergone a kind of corporate coup d'etat, and the corporate state is one. That the Democratic Party is as hostage or serves the interests of Wall Street as assiduously as the Republican Party. And corporations know only one word. I mean, unfettered, unregulated capitalism as Karl Marx understood, is a revolutionary force. They will push and push and push until there is a response. They will harvest the nation. That's a business term. And you see it in every aspect of our lives. Of course, this week we saw over 200,000 people lose their unemployment benefits. We are watching the destruction of our educational system, hedge fund managers taking a fervent interest in the school system and impoverished areas in this country. It is not about teaching poor children to write and read. They know that the federal government spends over $600 billion a year on education in this country, and they want that money along with Social Security money, along with everything else. And frankly, they're going to get it. There is nothing within the political system to stop them. The only way to push back now is through acts of civil disobedience, and it will come. It's inevitably going to come because there is no mechanism now within the formal structures of power to halt this disemboweling of not only the country, but the global economy, the creation of a kind of global neo-feudalism, a world of masters and serfs, where everybody is told they have to be, labor is told they have to be competitive in a global marketplace, which in essence means being competitive with sweatshop workers in Bangladesh who make 22 cents an hour, or prison labor in China. That's the world that's being created.
Was there a time when that was not the world? And if so, what brought this about?
Yes. We watched, I spent a lot of time in my book, Death of the Liberal Class, tracing the destruction of radical and populist movements, which really began around World War I, and the disemboweling of liberal institutions in the name of anti-communism and the Red Scare. Remember, after the McCarthy hearings in the 1950s, thousands of university professors and journalists, including I.F. Stone, writers, directors out of Hollywood, artists like Pete Seeger, social workers, high school teachers, they all became pariahs. They were pushed out of the system. So that by the 1970s, we as a citizenry really had no popular or mechanisms, self-propelled mechanisms by which we could fight back. And we changed in the 1970s, in the words of the Harvard historian Charles Mayer, from what he calls an empire of production to an empire of consumption. In short, we began to borrow to maintain both an empire and a level of consumption that we could no longer afford. Now the credit is dried up. Those mass-produced goods, especially with the rise of fuel, petrol prices are no longer cheap, and the only mechanism the state has left, the security and surveillance state has left, are these very draconian, harsh, coercive forms of control, which is why we're seeing legislation like the National Defense Authorization Act, the refusal on the part of the Obama administration to restore habeas corpus, the use of the Espionage Act to shut down whistleblowers and leakers, anyone who provides information to the press that counters the official narrative. They certainly know very well what's coming, and you can look around you. Look at what's happening in Chicago right now as I speak, to get a window into what they're preparing for.
Yeah, Chris, in the minute we have left, what do we do?
Well, I'm not going to vote for Obama, and I'm obviously not going to vote for Romney. I voted for Nader in 2008. I think it's a way to register our disgust at the entire system. I don't waste any emotional or intellectual energy on these elections. All hope is in the street. All hope is through acts of civil disobedience. We may not win, but if we're going to win, that's the only place we are going to win.
Movement politics. Chris Hedges, thank you. Keep up the brilliant work.